Let's begin here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's going to be nice not to have to take off my glasses to do this after this next week. Okay, the meeting opened at 6 p.m. and we did item 2, Pledge of Allegiance. And has everyone seen the agenda?
So, Mr. Mayor, we will need to add executive session on November 8th for legal updates. Well, I guess it's already on there, but Sam would like to have executive session on the legal updates.
So we'll have to call it.
Yes,
All right.
via the,
Okay. Any other changes or concerns of the agenda? If not, we need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? How about the minutes of November 1st and November 15th meetings?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of November 1 and November 15, 2021 meetings.
I'll second that.
All right, motion's been made and seconded to approve those 2 meetings, November 1st and November 15th of 2021. Any discussion?
Was that Lucas? Second.
Yep, Lucas, yep. If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And we'll go with Tanya. How are you, Tanya?
Good, how good to see you guys.
Good.
Apologize for running a few minutes late, I got a phone call. I just wanted to provide your council an update on where we're at with the wastewater treatment system improvements. So I brought an agenda with that has a handout that I want to go over. Okay. And it looks like there maybe is a few, are there any council members missing? I have extra copies I can leave?
No,
Okay.
but I will take one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just to review the, is it okay if I stand up here? Okay. Just to review the project goals, well, I don't want to.
You're okay.
Okay.
All right.
The main goals of the project were to add an aeration basin, because with the single aeration basin that the city had, they couldn't drain it and clean it, and it was lacking capacity during high rain events to be able to handle all the sewer flow that was coming in. There's a number of pieces of equipment throughout the plant that were aging and needed replacement. And then also right now that main power feed comes into the main operations building. It was thought to relocate that main power feed up into the garage area and kind of remodel that to an operations area. So those were all the things identified during the facility plan. Now that we're about 50% way through the design process, there's a number of things we've kind of worked through. So there's been some changes. And I wanted to go through those and then also the project costs with you to let you know where things are at. So the 50% level, what we're really doing is we're sizing major equipment, making sure things fit, laying it out, and making sure the plant will, not only the, flow will go through the plant as we intend, but also just operations, movements, and access to the plant works well. So we've got the aeration basin sized and laid out. We've got a hydraulic profile developed, knowing where the water elevations will be in the plant. We've got the UV disinfection layout, how that's going to fit into that old chlorine contact chamber. We've got that figured out. And we've got 50% level plans developed, and many of you should have received a copy of those in the email. So a lot of it probably looks like Greek, but I'll try to make things simple, yeah, I know. Some significant changes that we did, some are cost savings, some are cost adders, but we're evaluating that. So one thing was we were gonna add a brand new screen outside when we rerouted the flow. So it was gonna be very similar to the screen that, screens large chunks of things that come in with the flow that's inside the facility. As we were laying this out and we were modeling the aeration basin, we realized that the aeration basin really would work best if we operated the two basins in series. So that means the flow goes through one, it goes through the other one completely, and then moves over to the clarifiers. Some plants it'll come in, it'll split, and it'll go through both, half the flow will go through one and half the flow will go through the other. We can get a lot better treatment for Alcester if we go through one tank and then completely through the other. If we're doing that, we could use the old screen. And the other thing was where we were going to put the screen, or kind of have to put the screen, it would have had to get ripped out anyway in 15 to 25 years when the new pretreatment facility is constructed at some point. And so it seemed like kind of a waste of money to temporarily move it and rip it out if we could use the same one now and get by for a little while. So we identified that as a cost savings that also eliminated a splitter structure that was needed to split the flow between the two tanks. So there was some cost savings there. The other thing we looked at is we were trying to fit the blowers into the existing blower room or to where the generator was, and it was just difficult to get equipment that size in those rooms. The only point of access through them is just kind of a standard manway door, and they're not wide enough. So instead of trying to put a hole in the wall and do that, we determined that we think it's going to be easier to locate the blowers up in the garage area with the new electrical equipment, and then keep the operations area down in that other building for now. So. The other thing is the WAS pumps. We determined that the cost to build a whole new wet well to try to relocate those probably wasn't worth it. And so we kept those pumps where they're at. We looked at adding costs of paving the access area and adding some curb and gutter around that stormwater inlet to direct the flow. But in talking with the city more, they really don't want to pave that just because of concerns over slippery conditions during the winter. Just they don't feel the asphalt's needed down there. It was really not so much to make the site nicer, it was more to convey the wastewater. But once we've understood that more and talking with them, that quite a bit of it's actually an overflow problem from the plant, I think we can get away with not doing that. And then the other thing that we've worked through in the last 3 or 4 days that I didn't put on here, because it literally all came together yet this afternoon, was we are looking at changing the point in the plant where you pump. So right now, the water flows in by gravity and flows into the first aeration basin by gravity. Then it's pumped up over to the clarifiers, where it flows through the clarifiers, then through disinfection and out, and then pumped up the river via another pump station. If we move that pumping point to essentially long-term ahead of the aeration basin, so long-term, like 25, 30 years from now, it would come into this pretreatment facility, it'd get pumped up to the aeration basin, and then it'd flow by gravity through the rest of the plant until it's pumped. If we do that, just the cost of not having to excavate down so far, and the shoring and the dewatering because the water level is high, we can save quite a bit of money. And I'll go through those costs a bit, but that's the other thing we're looking at is we're looking at raising that tank up. So going through the cost now, the original construction plan estimate from the facility plan was just a little over about $3,095,000. At 50%, when we had our meeting last week with Dale and Lonnie and Pat, we showed a construction cost of almost 3.4, so about $300,000, or I guess $297,000 over. And then we also brought up concerns with inflation, just because with this market right now and construction costs, things are going up much more than 3% a year. And so there's still a concern about inflation, and especially when a lot of the projects that involve funding hit the bids later this year, that the costs are going to come in high. But I want to go through with you, before we go through the schedule, the opposite page, I want to go through these costs. And so these are all at the top, we've got mobilization, which if the project goes up, the mobilization increases. And then we did reduce our contingency at this point from 20% down to 15%. And we'll keep reducing that contingency as the costs go forward. And then we had cost deductions because our water improvement main was coming in less. We eliminated that bar screen. We eliminated a mag meter and the splitter structure. We had an extra couple pumps in our estimate that the city's already purchased. and then not blocking in the garage door. Also up at the at the existing garage, not blocking that in, make that an operations building, there was savings there. The other thing we did was we were off a little bit in our roofing quantities in the facility plan level, and so there was savings found there, but kind of there's one thing that offset that, and I'll go through that savings, I'll go through that in a minute. Our cost additions are the site grading. With the significant drainage issues on the site, it's just taking more dirt work and more modifications than we realized, so that's gonna cost more. The surfacing improvements for 97, that's the asphalt and that's the curb and gutter. We think we can revise those and drop that down quite a bit or possibly eliminate that after this week. So hopefully that's gonna go away. Stormwater's costing a little bit more. Some of that topsoil fill, again, that's for drainage, is a little bit more. We're gonna have to just kind of get into more of the site to do the grading, so it's gonna be more dirt work. So that means we're gonna have to seed more, so that's additional cost. The other thing that's down there right now is there's a non-potable water system. So they used to take and pump the treated effluent, and they'd use it for some, some water uses on the site that didn't need to be drinking level water quality. So some irrigation or flushing of things. That system's no longer operational, but it's still there. So there's piping underground that we're gonna be digging right through, and there's some pumps. And so we're gonna demo that out. That'll be about $5,000 additional, but it makes sense when we're in there to get rid of it. The concrete cost for the aeration basin, this is where we show that $130,000 cost increase. If we can raise the tank up, that's where we can get it down to right now just a $33,000 increase. And that's just because of the increased cost of concrete from the facility plan level and a little bit bigger tank. During the facility plan process, it's a high level cost estimate we put together. There's things that we don't include, and so part of the contingency that we needed to pull from was to do a coating on that aeration basin. We didn't have that in the facility plan, but it's a good idea to do it. So that'll add about $86,000, but it'll extend the life of that tank quite a bit, and it is worth it. And so we had the coating on the aeration basin walls for both the existing and the new structure. The overhead door, this is where you save $6,000 not blocking in the door up at the garage to turn into an operations building, but we need to put a new garage door in, and that's $8,000. So it's kind of, some of this is a wash, it's a give and a take. And then I mentioned that there was some savings found on the roofing because we overestimated the square footage. The bad thing is when we did our kickoff meeting out there and our architect was looking around at the CMU block wall, there's quite a few places where it's been painted, and then there's humidity in some of those buildings with that aeration basin. Moisture gets trapped in that block, and then when it freezes, it can fall off of the outside. So there's a fair number of places where that concrete block wall is falled off and needs some repair. And so we've got about $80,000 for repairs, so that offset that savings. And then we do need a new influent flume to measure flow. And so with not, that's kind of offsetting the cost of the meg meter that we're gonna transition and do this instead. It saves a little bit. The other adder we included was a dehumidifier for the intermediate lift station, with that continuing to be an operations building. It's just a good idea to get that space dry, and it's also gonna preserve your pipe coating down there in that wet, kind of damp area. And then the dehumidifier price for the WAS-RAS, that's on there for $1,300, and that's just because the cost of the dehumidifier has gone up since the facility plan. And we also have some money in there for some high-performance wall coatings and lighting improvements. That's down at the operations area. We haven't planned on doing much down there, but now with that staying in operations area, we want to just make it a little nicer. It needs a fresh coat of paint, and the lighting could be updated to LED. And then door and window prices have gone up since the facility plan. And so we've got about $40,000 in there just for additional door and window costs. I want to show you one last thing before we go through the schedule. That's on this exhibit right here. And so during the 50% meeting with the city, we looked at 3 options, and that's shown in red, blue, and yellow for the tank placement on the site. And just kind of talking through that at this stage, we were trying to find a good fit for the site, but also find something that would offset costs. And that red option right there, that was kind of our facility plan layout. It sticks way out into the parking area, which makes it really difficult to drive back up to the operations building. And if that's going to remain an operations building, it just was not ideal. So we were talking about either trying to push it out, as shown in the yellow, or flip it 90 degrees in the blue. And everybody likes flipping at 90 degrees more in the blue. There's two disadvantages with this that we've talked through, and I think we've resolved. But one is the future pre-treatment facility. You can see kind of outlined in that dashed red line, and I can turn it like this too, so the audience can see me. But that dashed red line, that would have to get pushed further east, and there's probably a 25-foot front yard setback. It's kind of a goofy lot because it doesn't really abut a street. And so we talked about possibly applying for a variance at the time the facility would be constructed, as long as the adjacent neighbor wouldn't oppose it. And they seem like they've been good to work with. So that's a long ways off, but just something to consider when that time comes. And then the other thing with that tank initially being so deep, and when I say so deep, it was probably going to be the bottom of the tank would have been about 17 feet below grade, so very deep. There was concerns that additional columns would need to be added on those long sidewalls in that tank to help support it. And so what we have looked at though is by raising up the tank, we don't need those columns anymore. That's where quite a bit of the savings comes in. And that blue layout just really opens up the parking lot more and lays in and fits on the site nicer. So right now that's the planned location of it that we're proceeding with. Soil borings, we believe those will be done next week now, and talking with Dale and Lonnie, that'll give them time to mark the water lines out there. And so if you want to flip back onto the handout, there was a schedule on the
How much
left.
room needs to be between that future pre-treatment building and the new aeration basin?
It would be nice if we could get at least 15 feet. So 15 to 20 feet between the buildings would be ideal. We could maybe, that building's not as deep, so we could maybe, 15 is probably pretty safe. We could maybe get down to 10, but. And that's where we talked, if we could have a 10-foot front yard setback to match the side yard instead of the 25, then it should fit on the site.
Is that future pre-treatment building gonna be set into the hillside there?
Yes, and that's actually advantageous for that site, because what's really nice is there's a big trough that has to go through the screen, and it's nice when the operator is not having, because the bottom of that trough is about the depth where the flow comes in, or the sewer line comes into the facility, and it's nice when it's not so deep. And so by having to cut into the hillside, it's gonna work out just perfect, where we can get a vehicle and a drive in there and not have to have steps down, so.
So why is there such a need for parking there?
It's not so much that there's a need for parking. I'm gonna come over here. It's not so much that there's a need for parking out here. This is quite a hillside, right here, where you're by that disinfection building. It's fairly steep coming out of that. And so it's the steep slope right between that and where the edge of the tank would have been with either the yellow, or pardon me, the yellow or the red. It just, you would have been able to pull in, but you probably would have had to back out. And that's just when you're going in there every day, that's kind of a pain. And so this is where the blue is nicer, they could just pull up.
So the blue is best case, yellow would be second best,
Yes.
and red would be
Not an option.
not.
Exactly, yeah.
And the other reason is, it's not a very, it looks like it's quite a large distance between the corner of the red and curb and gutter or the disinfection building. But it's really not that wide if we need to get the wheel loader in there
Right.
or something for maintenance.
The other thing we're talking about doing too, just to try to save some space, that driveway up to the disinfection building, it's really not very usable. It's so steep. And so we're talking about cutting and grading and basically putting like a loading dock in there that you could back a pickup to. And then it'd be easier almost to just be able to access that for equipment and get things in and out if it's that type of situation. And it would save some room on the site. So that's one thing that's being kicked around. I'm not definite, but I think that's what we'll do. Any other questions before I go through the schedule?
Well, can we go back to where you said, what did you say? Some savings on surface improvements. Now, we're only talking about surface improvements in this area. We're not talking about the resultant cameraing of the entire sewer system in Alcester?
No.
Yeah.
Surface improvements would just refer to, like the paving of this area down here
Okay.
at the plant, and then curb and gutter. And then there was also gonna be some gravel brought in up at the top by the garage area. So, yep. These are all good questions, so keep asking them if you have any.
So Lonnie still will have, or Gail will still have to go down in there and clean that one screen out.
Yes, he will. There, you know what, we need one of those at a wastewater plant until there is that pretreatment building and we can put a mechanical screen in.
Okay.
It's still, I mean, it is a necessity to keep that stuff out of the other tanks. So,
That was the gross.
Yes, it was.
I know, it is, but
Yeah.
it's part of the process.
But it's still gonna be so much safer.
Oh.
I couldn't hardly handle
Yeah.
the safety of that.
Being in that building is
It's very
Yes,
scary.
it
I stay close to the alternative one. I don't like being anywhere near that.
Oh, I just worry if anything would ever rush in there, that it'd just be killed.
Just to get the electrical equipment out of there,
Yeah.
with the situation,
That is
that
scary.
is the safest thing
Yeah.
for your staff.
And for the equipment, I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah, your equipment could just be,
yeah. And the city has replaced 2 of the pumps down there, what with pumps that can be submerged, even though it's not a submerged area right now, that way if it does flood at some point, or water would get in there, the pumps won't be damaged because they're designed to be able to operate in submerged condition.
it was very eye-opening.
Yes, it was. Yes.
I like to take councils in there, just because you don't see it otherwise, you don't understand,
No.
it's very informative, so. So the last thing I wanted to go over, if there's no, and I can still ask questions, but with the schedule. And so on kind of the back of the agenda, there's an updated schedule, so we just had the 50% design review meeting. Our next review meeting will be 90% in February. We'll probably have a couple smaller conversation, decision-making things with Dale and Pat and Lonnie
They
between
should
now
say
and then.
2022 instead of 2021 then, right?
Oh, yes.
yes,
Thank you.
I wondered about that.
Yes,
Yeah.
February 2022 and March 2022, and there's 2 marches.
Yep, okay.
Thank you. So we'll have the 90% February 2022, and that's really when, you know, things are pretty much finalized. At that point, we're taking city comments, small little changes, little things, but as far as like major equipment being placed, sized, all that's done. So there really should be very few changes after 90%. We'll submit it at 90% to the city for review, and then we'll also submit it to the state, to the Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources for their review. We'll get comments back from both you and the states, and if there's any comments that things need to be revised or changed, we'll make those changes, and then essentially the documents will be done and ready for bid. We'd advertise for bid for a project like this, probably I would say at least 3 minimum, probably 4 weeks for a larger project. And then open bids in June. And then by the time the council gives notice and all the other documents can take care of it, usually takes about a month. So we're projecting awarding the bid probably at the July council meeting. And then they probably would get started in August, and when I say get started, there may be with a project like this, you know, they can get the tank going and they can get some other stuff going. So we've got a couple weeks of submittals to go back and forth, and then they might come on site and start to do some stuff. But a lot of the equipment, especially electrical panels and some of the other pumps and things like that, I mean, they're anywhere from 20 to 30 weeks out right now for shipment, so it takes a while. So that's where there may be kind of a brief lag. And then with likely the project would be completed sometime late in 2023, just to give them more time to get that equipment in one more summer season to get stuff cleaned up and seeded and done. So, and the only schedule concern we have right now, we brought this up with the city, is we need a railroad permit to replace that stormwater pipe out on the south side of the plant. That pipe does go in the railroad ditch, and 2 of the valves, we'd like to modify too, that I think are going to be located in the railroad ditch, just by looking at where they're placed. And so we'll need a permit for that work. Depends on the railroad, sometimes it's not too bad, But sometimes it takes a while. So that's the one thing that could affect the schedule. If it takes a long time to get that railroad permit, things could get delayed a little bit.
Were you able to make connection with the people Maggie suggested?
We are just starting that. I think tomorrow Chris is gonna call them.
Okay.
So. And Dale and Pat and Lonnie have all been really good about answering our questions and getting staff waiting, so thanks to your staff too for making things easier on us. Anything else at all?
You don't see any red flags, you don't see any unusual things. I mean, obviously, you can't tell what's underground, you can't tell what we're gonna come across when we start making holes, but still.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things we want to look at. There's an old manhole in there we think is part of the non-potable water that it'd be nice to rip it out because it's kind of a bump and trying to get in the door. There's little stuff, and it's a remodel. We're gonna run into stuff during construction. Hopefully, it's not a big deal, but we're gonna run into stuff. Something will come up. I'll just tell you that now. Something will come up in construction. It's gonna cost a little bit more because that always happens. But you know, we try to think about as much of that as we can right now to try to avoid that. But just
That's what the contingency's for.
That's exactly, yeah. Any questions, comments, concerns? I mean, we all have concerns, but at the same time, sure seems to be progressing well.
So in your next 40% design, do you anticipate any more large construction cost changes?
there'll be some. I think the biggest thing I would anticipate is I think we're gonna know more about inflation and how much that's gonna impact things as we get updated pricing between now and February. And then the one thing we're not gonna know is we have some suppliers right now, especially on the pipe end of things, where if you can't, especially a PVC pipe, they can't hold a bid price for more than a couple weeks. And when you're a contractor trying to bid something out 3 weeks, and then you know that once the bids get looked at, it's gonna be a month and a half before it's awarded even, and then you have to do submittals before you can formally place your order, it makes it really hard for contractors to provide pricing without providing us the big cushion in case things go up. So that's the one thing that when I talk about inflation, that's the one thing we're not gonna know until things bid, and we'll just have to see where things come in at.
They have to order things, hold it in inventory, and then say, well, I've held this for so long, it's 20% higher. It's terrible anymore. Supply is not meeting demand in a lot of cases, so.
It's probably the most challenging cost estimating / bidding climate I've been in my career so far in 20 years.
Yeah.
So I say that not to scare anybody, it's more just to prep you for that.
Yeah.
It's just, we don't know.
Any other discussion? Not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Very sweet, thank you.
Merry Christmas from Bam.
Oh, Merry Christmas to you.
All right, we go on to number 6, Alderman interviews if needed. I don't know if we have anybody from Ward 2 here. It appears if we do, so we're going to skip number 6 and we'll go on to number 7, public input. Yes?
I would like not leave tonight to hear, it's not on the agenda, but the HRC, the status of that. I'd very much like to know what the status is.
Okay. It's not on the agenda, you're right. Any other public input?
I have a few comments I'd like to make.
Okay.
Okay, Patty brought me in the new lease agreement, and I asked if there were any changes, and she said, yes, per her request, you're raising my rent. And I told her some of my concerns about raising my rent, and she told me that she sent an email to you and to Darla about my concerns. And I just want to know how come I never got a response from anybody about it.
It's a good question.
Yeah, good question for my end too.
I mean, I've had rental properties, and I have never just said, oh, I decided to raise your rent, so I'm raising your rent, here's your lease. You discuss this before you do it. You just don't. You know, I was blindsided. And I brought your lease, and I'll pay your extra money, but I just thought it was pretty rotten that I couldn't even get a phone call from anybody about my concerns. So, that's all I have to say.
All right, any other public input?
I have. I would still like to get the water usage to the garage lots. I got this today in the mail without an envelope and stuff. And so we seem to be sharing public information on the cards and stuff. I've also been apprised of another instance where it appears that information, telephone numbers are being handed out by this office to people wanting to lease housing that's been for sale. Please tell me that's not accurate. Okay, the other thing I'd asked for was the promissory note resolution. I just asked to have it emailed to me, just so I could see it before the meeting. Why was that such a heavy charge? No answer? On the property, the sharing with the telephone numbers, there was, just for the rest of you so you know, there was a letter sent to the mayor on that instance where the person whose telephone number was shared was unhappy with that, and she did notify the mayor. Is that not correct? Okay.
Any other public input?
Mayor, I have a couple things. Since it didn't ask to be on the agenda, I'd just like to share a few things.
All right,
I wanted to let everybody know that Grace moved and is taking call. I also wanted to share about our Christmas tree lighting event. I believe the paper's gonna run a little story here, but we posted on Facebook. With the winnings, we got third. I'm gonna be doing a kind of a public relations thing where, like homecoming, I'm gonna be getting 9 little elves, and I'm gonna hide them around the city, and I'm gonna try to give, kids a chance to find an elf and get a present, so.
that's cool.
But I think that's about it. I think that radio, Pat got a bill a few months ago. You guys approved the radio for an in-car. I believe you guys just got the bill, so everything's back ordered, but it should be on track to being done by the end of the year.
Cool.
One more thing, Mayor. Was this voted on? Did the city council take a vote on raising my rent?
We did when we actually put the new budget in place. Basically, what was discussed was, I believe it was the year before, the rent was supposed to increase, and we decided not to do that because of COVID-19 and all kinds of things that were going on. So we didn't do it then, so we just postponed it for a year. And now at 2022, that was increased. And it was basically voted on as a budget item, so, yes.
Well, because I read the city council minutes and I never seen anything in the paper where it was voted on. And I was just curious as to,
You would have had to have looked at the actual budget in order to
okay,
see that.
All right.
Sorry. And, I mean, we're all guilty of not having the best communication, and we just gotta get better at that. That's all there is to it, so.
I would like to say something regarding this all. Your door got fixed, correct? The back one.
yes, it did.
Did anything get done about that front door?
I'm working on that.
I have,
Because that was one of my complaints,
I remember.
that the rent did not get raised until that was all
Until it
done.
was fixed, I do remember.
I've made a new striker plate, I just gotta get it down, get it installed.
well, Lonnie told me that somebody, whoever does your was doing your sewer lines or plumber lines up here at the new place, was gonna come down there and replumb under the sink for me because you could smell sewer gas all the time. And he looked under there and he goes, oh my God, this is not right. I said, I don't know how to open nothing to clean out anything. I don't know how to do that, Barry. We looked, we can't figure it out. And Lonnie said that he had talked to Pat, and Pat agreed that the man could come there and replumb under the sink behind the bar. And that was almost 2 months ago. I ain't seen nobody.
Yeah, I got a hold of somebody the other day, and actually it was Axel. He was gonna do an end around because I can't get work done at my house. Nobody's willing to do it.
Well, I know.
So,
This was some Rasmussen guy that's doing, and, you know, I said, okay, so we pour bleach down there so we don't have to smell sewer gas so much. Because I have no clue how to open that and clean it.
yeah, I'm sure there's plenty that could be done, but we just we've gotta deal with supply. It's just like we were talking about with Tanya a minute ago.
I realize it's hard to get anybody to do
You can't get anybody
anything.
to do anything anymore.
I know. I agree.
And I'm not making excuses, I'm just stating a fact. It is the way it is, and we're working on it, but it seems like we're spinning our wheels as fast as we can.
You can't find nobody to do nothing around your house for you.
I'm just curious why, things like that, we rent that building. To me, that's an embarrassment that this is going on. I don't know about anybody else, but that's embarrassing.
Well,
That we're raising the rent, but that's a problem.
I understand that, but are you gonna do the plumbing?
I don't know how to do plumbing.
Of course not, and neither do I.
Okay, but we
the
raise
people
the
that
rent
do-
is what I'm trying to
I
say.
understand, yes, I see.
So do we get a specific person to do this plumbing? Or, I mean, I don't know. I have no problem getting somebody to come to my house when I need it.
Is it backing up or is it just smelling?
It's smelling and it doesnn't go down fast.
So
See,
possibly it just needs a new trap, the trap is plugged up with crap and,
But he said
Well,
it's,
there's no vent, I mean, you
It's
think
the
about
way
where,
it's-
there's no vent that's coming straight
Sure.
up from there, and there should be a vent stack right there.
absolutely.
And there isn't, so,
I don't know, Lucas, I'm sorry. I'm
That's
not a
fine.
plumber, I don't know.
Okay.
And it's an old building, you know?
yeah, it's been there since Shep was a pup, so, you know.
I don't have a clue.
That's fine.
Yeah, we do need to address those things. And I think that's a valid point, Cindy, that we shouldn't raise lease values or anything like that until property is fixed. But at the same time, if it's scheduled that it's raised at a certain time according to the budget to keep the city in the black, for lack of a better word, then it's gotta happen. And if it didn't happen in 2020, well, it's gotta happen in 2021. And if it didn't happen in 2021, then it's gotta happen in 2022.
I
So-
understand the fact that things have to be raised. I get that. But I did not agree. I'm sorry, I'm just, this
Can I
is
ask-
upsetting.
When was the last time your rent was raised? Can I ask that, Teresa?
Well, I think she said 3 years ago.
Okay, I'm just curious.
So I did look it up. In 2014, 15, and 16, the rent was $1,200 a month. In 17 and 18, it went from $1,200 to $1,300 a month. 2019, 20, and 21 is $1,350. So rent $50 increase in
$50 a month.
to 2019.
And
Yes,
so now what are we raising it to?
$1,400.
So
About
$50.
$50.
Okay, I just couldn't remember how much they were raising it,
Well,
which
it's,
is probably less than the rate of inflation.
Is there anything else we should be aware about on the building, or any other complaints, I guess, on the bar that we should be aware of, you know?
Well, could use some new chairs.
The other thing that's on the docket is the flooring in the restroom needs to be looked at.
yes.
And in some point in time, we also should look at new flooring in the rest of the facility. Because in the restrooms, it's still the original flooring from the grocery store. The bar area flooring has been patched, so some area is this flooring and other area is this flooring, and it's not all the same. So, but I do want to look at the bathrooms in 2022.
Yeah.
So we got some COVID money. How much did we get?
$67.
And what are we using it all on? I know the sidewalk.
The sidewalk,
I mean, because this would be could be one thing we could put some money towards or not.
I have to get confirmation from Sam on that, and I have not heard what all qualifies.
Okay.
I know any water or sewer project qualifies, but I don't know.
But we might not be able to use it because we've got grants, right? For some, isn't that the way we understood
At
it?
this point, we did not want to mess with our sewer funding because it was a good
Right.
package. The sidewalk, it's kind of vague how it is worded, but the sidewalk is definitely economic, or a development. So that, I feel would
Okay.
qualify, but Sam needs to
Yes.
confirm that. And this, you know, the flooring, I'm not sure about the plumbing. We can contact Tyler and actually set up a formal time for him to come and find out actually what is wrong. Because I honestly don't know. Lonnie didn't know.
Well, because none of us are plumbers, that's not our business, okay.
There's some concern that maybe it was never plumbed right, however long
Which
ago.
is a possibility.
Needs to be vented.
So,
So
Exactly.
maybe I don't know, maybe we should consider doing the new flooring too. If it's something that we could use.
I would love to get the new flooring in the bathroom because there are some problem areas that if we don't do something, it's going to be a bigger
Yes.
problem area.
So that's something we should ask Sam about, okay, I'm just asking.
If I may offer a comment.
No, I'm sorry, but
Oh, I was just going to bring up Sullivan's in 2011.
is there any other public input at this time? Okay, seeing none, hearing none, we're going to move on to legal updates, and I'm assuming we're going to have to call our legal representative, but it says property nuisance updates. Do we know anything
There's only two things that I know. With respect to the house on Iowa Street, the building permit has been paid. An additional building permit has not been, no one has requested that for any additional work that may be done on the home. So at this point, I don't know of any other work that is being done, but we are in communication with the attorney. With respect to the house on Ofsted, or Union Street, Ofsted Street. A notice has been sent to the property owner and to the mortgage company stating that a plan needs to be done by the end of this year. If nothing is done, the city will pursue condemning.
Okay. Then we'll move on to letter B, and we'll have to have a motion for executive session to contact Sam for legal counsel.
I'll make a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2-3.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to enter into executive session pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2, legal counsel. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And 6:47 PM. We're in executive session.
It is very chilly.
It
After
is
being
cool.
in here and then you go out
Yes,
there.
yeah, and if you just are sitting there,
Yeah.
yeah, it's cool out there.
Did you do your exercise?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I would have kept you warm. What time did it come out, did you say?
7:16. Okay, it is 7:16 PM and we are out of executive session. Let's see, updates. The next statement is the mayor's statement, and this is referring to, I had a concerned citizen contact me that has an unlisted, or I guess you would call it private, cell phone number. And for whatever reason, that cell phone number was shared with somebody outside of the city of Alcester. And one of the things that every single person on this council, every single employee of the city of Alcester, including the mayor, needs to realize is that privacy is very important. Those of us that are in that website, our information is public. That's the way it is. But an individual that is my wife, for instance, she has a cellular number and it's different if it's our landline number that's in the phone book. As long as it's not listed, or excuse me, as long as it isn't unlisted in the phone book, it's public knowledge. But any private information like that needs to be kept confidential. And that's what this mayor's statement is about. There'll be no sharing of private information ever. And we'll go on to number 10, library board member, city representative.
The city is short one representative on the library board, and our librarian has contacted me and said that she would like to have a person, Sarah Allerding, approved as the city representative, so the library board has a complete group.
Do you want the correct spelling of her name?
Yeah, how do you spell that?
I can tell from the look in your eye.
Allerding.
Yes, that is correct.
Sarah, Sarah.
OH.
So I would make a motion to approve Sarah Allerding as the city representative for the library board.
I'll second that.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve Sarah Allerding as city representative for the library board. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the Alcester Community Center promissory note resolution, which is 2021-18. You all have it in the back there.
So the reason this is being brought before the council is some of the large donor contributions for the community center were pledged over a series of 5 years. And now that the project is nearing completion, we still have 3 years left on those pledges. And this promissory note is the first step in bridging that gap between when the donor contributions will be made and so the final construction bills can be paid. So as it states in the resolution, approximately $3,101,310 have been pledged for the project, and $2,315,410 have been received. So at this time, we are asking to pass the resolution to allow borrowing up to $500,000 to pay for the construction costs associated with the building of the center.
So you see the resolution, you've got a good idea about what it's all about. I would need a motion and a second, etc.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution number 2021-18 promissory note.
I'll second it.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve 2021-18 resolution, that is the promissory note. Is there any discussion?
If we have any donations that come in other than these pledges, would they be used to offset this a little bit? Promissory note? Okay.
That is correct.
Is there any other discussion?
I do have, so the 303,660, that's what's left out that we're waiting for?
No,
In pledge?
it's about 548,000 that is
Okay.
waiting to come in.
Okay,
The 303,000 is what was requested for a tax levy.
oh, okay,
And
okay.
that was necessary information for codified law.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Excuse me. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Fund transfers from Pleasant Hill Cemetery, etc.
So when we do payroll and other expenses, the checks that I have for Pleasant Hill Cemetery are just the small checks that you would use for your own personal account. Oftentimes when I pay a bill, it's part of general fund items as well. And so instead of, oh, and also when Parker was working for the city, he would work in various departments. So instead of cutting a separate payroll check for him on those small checks, which I cannot run through the printer, we just did them all on our general fund payroll checks. And then once a year, we'll reimburse general fund with the expenses. So this is a list of all the expenses for general fund, I'm sorry, for the cemetery to present. These monies were paid out of general fund, and the amount of $10,194.25 are actually those individual checks that I did write out of the cemetery account. And so the difference between $18,686.48 and $10,194.25 is the amount that needs to be transferred from the cemetery main checking to general fund to reimburse for expenses.
So does that make sense to everybody? I mean, basically, the cemetery owes the city general fund $8,492.23. Excuse me. Any discussion, or shall we go ahead with the motion to transfer that?
Sounds like looks like we're under budget for the cemetery expenses. So I'd make a motion to approve a transfer of $8,492.23 from the Pleasant Hills Cemetery main account to the general fund for annual expenses.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded to approve the transfer from the Pleasant Hill Cemetery main account to the general fund to balance out the discrepancies between the two in the amount of $8,492.23. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. There's one. Motion to approve transfer from main checking to community center fund bond monies.
The bond that the city took out, which was the city portion contribution to the event center, was deposited into our general fund. And I would like to transfer $300,571.71 from general fund checking to the community center account.
Will you repeat that aloud?
$300,571.71.
71 cents.
303,000 or 300,000?
300,000.
300,000, okay.
$571.71.
Okay, the motion, or excuse me, no, we don't have a motion yet, but we would need a motion to approve the transfer from main checking to the community center fund for bond monies of $300,000, $300,571, I guess, and 71 cents.
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer from the main checking account to the community center fund of the bond monies in the amount of $300,571.71.
I'll second it.
That was Darla. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the transfer from the main checking to the community center bond fund, community center fund bond monies in the amount of $300,571.71. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And supplemental appropriation ordinance. That's
Okay.
this document that you have to have Superman eyes to read.
So, for those that are new on the council, we do the budget in July, which goes into effect the following January. And usually at the end of the year, in December, we have to account for those areas that we didn't, maybe things that we didn't know that were going to happen, or things that did happen. So when we are short in each of our different categories, we supplement the budget, which means we add to those categories so that we are not short in any of our individual areas. So with respect, I'll give you a little detail of where we are short in some of those areas and why. The city is a flow-through measure for grants. So when entities like the Community Foundation want to give grants to either the fire department, this year Summer Rec got some, or any other projects, they flow through the city. So the foundation gives the city the check, and then the city cuts a check to the entity. So we did have some grant monies, that's why 411.10 grant distribution. And then also, we updated our insurance, both policy, locations, assets, and there was $3,100 that I did not know about until the policy came back with the proper amounts. So that's where legislative supplement comes from. With respect to the finance office, I have had some overtime this year due to the projects that we have had going on. And then also with respect to supplies, at the beginning of the year, we did purchase quite a bit of sanitizing equipment because that was the beginning of our COVID type stuff. And then also, when those buses came for Snowstorm, I purchased some promotional bags that were City of Alcester bags. So that is also part of that. With respect to the police department, adding a new officer, you have a lot of uniform expense, getting them up and running. It was the best guess what the utilities would run on our new building, so I was a little bit short on those. And then the purchase of equipment. The police got 3 different pieces of equipment this year, so that's a little, we need to supplement that a little bit. The fire allowance, that is a grant distribution. Firemen received grant from the foundation. Just some repairs up at the city garage. They needed some furnace work done in their office, not in the city shop part, but in their office. So that's what the garage is. Highway and street, let's see. For highway and street, we had some major repairs to the wheel loader. We had an increase in, let's see, buying the dump truck, and then also the street improvements, the additional street improvements that we did. So that,
was the asphalt stuff.
yes, correct.
That deeper stuff, the higher density. Yeah.
So that is our street supplemental. The wastewater facility plan, I was not counting on the engineering expenses coming in yet at this time. And so that's what those expenses are. Plus, we had ordered the pumps back in 20, but they didn't come until January of 21. So that's the 32,000 for equipment. And with respect to the swimming pool, we did some pump house repairs. Chlorine is really hard on lines and just the necessary seals and all that kind of stuff. So we did have some repair work there that needed attention. And with respect to the park, we had, we planted trees in the park this year, and the summer rec received some grant money also for the ball field. They got a new scoreboard, and they also did something else. It was like a major repair for summer rec that they got grant money for. So that also is there. And with respect to the library ordered 2 new children's PCs. They're for the real little people that are just really learning how to type, and they have all kinds of fun games on them. And I think the last PCs they had were probably 7 years old, 6 years old, which were then donated to, one of them was donated to the Hudson Library. So, but those were $5,900. And then,
Is that door part of that too?
not the door, because I put that in repairs and maintenance, and we still had some room left in that, but we also ordered a shelving unit for
Oh,
the
that's right.
newspaper. It was a memorial for Merlin. So, but that was something that I wasn't counting on. And then the liquor store was the door replacement. So, then the bigger ones is the golf course and the new community center. So I'm trying to keep the construction costs separate from the inside items with the community center until we get all the construction stuff done. So some of those things I have been running through the clubhouse, which would be like the tables, the chairs, all the inside things that have nothing to do with construction, but it's glassware.
Dishes.
It's all stuff that we need to get operational. So that is those items that you see listed there. So what I am requesting is to take $22,500 out of Second Penny, to take $39,000 out of the community center funds, and transfer $61,500 to the golf course fund.
I had a few questions on it.
Okay.
So the public safety, the 9,000, what did they get?
They got 2 different sets of radios.
But part of that was COVID money that paid for that.
That is true, but what I have to compensate for in my budget is my expenses. So my expense went up because I bought that.
Right.
If I did my budget and I said I was gonna spend $10 on equipment, and I spent 90, I have to supplement my budget
Right.
that other $90.
And that's all this really is a supplemental. I mean, it's just moving money from account A to account B.
So this money was there, we're not, okay.
Yep,
Then the pumps, you said that was in the last year's budget, so why,
but I didn't write the check until 21.
okay, so
So
that's why.
when my accountants
Because it was
look at-
in last year's, so then it showed that we had that left over.
Right.
Okay.
But when my accountants look at my 21, they don't go back and look at 20 and
Okay.
say, what did you have in
Okay.
the budget?
Okay,
What they care about is what did you write checks for
Okay.
this year?
and then the only other thing why would there be such a big difference on the salary at the golf course from one year to the next? That's my only other question.
Well, we have 9 new employees. 2 of them are full-time. And
So this isn't for 2021?
this is for 2021.
We haven't had those 9 employees that long.
But we
We've
have
had
them,
a
There
couple,
was-
2 or 3.
I think
Okay.
there
And
was
I-
some extra hours this summer too.
There was some extra hours.
And then the other thing, when we have our ladies, I call them, that come out, and our clubhouse attendants,
Mhm.
they get about 10 or 10.50 an hour.
Mhm.
When they're not there and Mike ends up working more, he gets paid more.
Obviously.
And then when he has the weeks that there was some weeks that, or some pay periods when he had overtime, then he
Okay.
was getting, what, $16 an hour?
Okay,
So.
okay,
some of
so,
that was part
yeah,
of
it's
that.
just like, why would that vary so much?
and I have to,
And this year is obviously going to be a strange year, this 2022.
well,
But-
2021 is a strange
Yeah.
year because of all these construction costs
Okay.
and startup costs and,
So
yeah.
all of Clint and Irene's
Up
time,
until now.
getting the kitchen ready,
Right, and then,
all of that,
Yeah.
is
is
extra.
included in.
And I'm projecting this whole month of December as well. So we are scheduling our soft opening, this week. And then hopefully we'll have a for sure date in the near future, but,
And I think you told us,
but,
2 weeks.
so
Yeah.
we're gonna have staff there that,
16th, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No, I'm wrong. Was it the 17th or 18th? What did he say when we were out there? Was it next Friday or Saturday?
Saturday was the
That's the
Saturday.
18th, I believe.
18th,
That-
that's right.
That's what he told us.
so, yeah,
Okay.
I'm projecting where our salary expense is
Okay,
gonna be.
I just was asking.
So those of us that are not aware of this, what this is the method by which the city remains in the black. You cannot have an account, I don't care if it's an account for underwater basket weaving, it doesn't matter what it's for. Could be for the pool, could be for water, could be for whatever. It cannot be negative at the end of the year. So we move second penny money, we move whatever money to there that we need to make it black. It's black. And then, once it's black, the accountants say, okay, well then, we're okay for the year. So. And we would need a motion to approve those year-end fund transfers. She said 22,500 from,
Second
yeah, I'm looking at the column, second penny, and 39,000 to the community center.
No,
From the community center, excuse me. And all of that goes, 61,500 then goes to the golf course fund.
correct.
Okay, so,
I'll make a motion to approve year-end fund transfers, taking $22,500 from the second penny account, $39,000 from the community center account, and moving it to, moving that $61,500 to the golf course fund.
I'll second that.
motion's been made and seconded to move 22,500 from second penny, 39,000 from community center funds to the golf course fund totaling $61,500. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And we have a supplemental appropriation ordinance that is relating to those transfers. We need a motion and a second on those, on that ordinance.
I'll make a motion to approve the first reading of supplemental appropriations ordinance 2021-19.
I'll second it.
Motion was made and seconded to approve the first reading of supplemental appropriation ordinance 2021-19. Is there any discussion? Again, motion was made and seconded to approve the first reading of supplemental appropriations ordinance 2021-19. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And finance office updates.
So there are two bills to be presented for approval. One of them is the work done that Banner Engineering has been doing on our facility plant. All of these expenses will be reimbursed back to the city as part of our loan package. So Leslie, I thought, was coming down from CCOG tonight, but I will touch base with her tomorrow and get the ball rolling on getting the refund coming back to the city. Then the other invoice is for the mobile radio that Austin talked about. We did get that in. The radio will go directly down to Sioux City, and then they'll make an appointment to schedule to get the radio put in the car.
So is this is the car? Is it already in the pickup?
Yes, I think they did the
Pickup first.
pickup first.
All right, well, let's see, we'll deal with Banner Engineering invoice first. We need a motion and second vote.
I'll make a motion to pay facility work upgrades in the amount of $11,750.70 from the sewer fund?
Yes, we're fine.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded to pay facility work upgrades to Banner Engineering per their invoice totaling $11,750.70 from the sewer fund. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Then we've got the Motorola radio invoice, looks like $7,296.50 for an APX 8500 mobile radio.
I'll make a motion to pay the APX 8500 mobile radio in the amount of $7,296.50 from the general fund.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the payment. Is it to Motorola? It's to Motorola, or I guess.
Motorola Solutions.
Okay,
Chicago.
to Motorola for an APX 8500 mobile radio totaling $7,296.50 from the general fund. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, how about the warrants? Did everyone get an opportunity to, even though we had an opportunity to go over and sample some of the fantastic food, take a look at the warrants? Are there any questions, concerns, worries? If not, we need a motion to approve those warrants.
I'll make a motion to approve all warrants.
I'll second it.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the warrants. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Right. Reminders and updates. The city office will be closed December 24th. That will be in, for Christmas Day, even though it's Christmas Eve. And it'll be December 31st for the New Year's holiday, New Year's Day holiday, even though it's the 31st, so.
Also on number D,
Oh.
I have been,
Sorry.
or letter D, I should say.
Yeah.
I have not been readily available to do the spot checks, so, and I did update the schedule with the current council members. So I did kind of go over with Lucas what that all involves, so he kind of knows. But if possible, I have all the statements in with the exception of December's. So if you have some time that you want to schedule and we can get those done, that would be great. If your December is a little bit crazy, that's fine. If we can get these done by the first part of next year, that's good too. So, because the auditors won't be back for 21 until April.
Sorry, I skipped right over
That's
letter
okay.
D there.
No problem.
Okay, well, we'll move on to number 15.
I think I would like a motion to enter an executive session pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2-1.
That will be for
Personnel.
employees/personnel.
I'll second that.
Motion has been made and seconded to enter into executive session pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2, parent 1. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're in executive session at 7:52 p.m. 7:52 p.m.
Just do whatever you gotta do.
No, one eye tomorrow and then one eye the next day, so.
You'll have to tell us stories about how well it goes.
Yeah, well, my brother-in-law just had it done about a month ago, and Kinda wish I could hear some of what he had to say.
Are we out?
I did both of mine.
Well,
I had nothing. No problem. No.
we are out of executive session at 8:24 PM.
Before we adjourn, did you remember that Gordon asked about HRC?
Yes, I didn't remember that, but I'm glad you reminded me. Regarding the HRC, I guess the best answer I can give is we're intending still to have a meeting, I believe, yet this year, just to try to establish what the next steps are going to be. The HRC is a Housing and Redevelopment Commission, and they're not landlords. And they never were intended to be landlords. And yet they've been landlords for 10 years, or however long that fourplex has been up and running. And so the members of the board have been interested in trying to get out from underneath that fourplex. We've sold quite a number of lots on Beck Drive, and that's what we're here for. We're here to redevelop the area, whatever area that might be. It was a great idea to build that fourplex, but then it should have been immediately sold to some kind of entrepreneur, a developer, whoever, that wanted the property to then rent and have supplemental income or whatever kind of income. And so we're in the process of looking at maybe an HOA. Don't have any idea if that's the way it's gonna go. Might not. We don't know, but we have to look at all different possible alternatives to how we're doing this right now, because as that building ages, we are going to start seeing roofs, one roof actually, over all 4 of the units that are gonna need replacement, and furnaces, air conditioners, it doesn't matter what it is, that are gonna need replacement. And when those things happen, we've got a finite amount of money to deal with. And we obviously don't want to just keep increasing people's rent, but at the same time, if those people owned that property, they would have to pay for mowing the lawn. They don't right now. They would have to pay for removing the snow. They don't right now. Instead, the HRC does. So the HOA, without, I mean, it doesn't have to be an HOA. We're just using that as an example. Some kind of an organization that says, you know, we'll take care of all the lawn, all the maintenance, all the whatever, and it costs you however much every month. No, that didn't increase your rent. It did increase your expenses, but at least you have a new furnace if your furnace goes out. So that's kind of what we're talking about, but none of it is even written in sandstone, let alone cement. Does that help? Okay, well, in that case, we'll move on to item number 16.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the council.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn the council. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I voted yes, and it says 8:28 PM.